Always love to start my days with a dance
Yes.
party. Gosh, welcome back, risers and thrivers. I am happy to have you here with us today. I really want to start off by saying I've got a little confession. I almost canceled the show today because of my own insecurities, and we all struggle. And I very rarely feel nervous. I admit that. But today I feel, not my best self today because I struggle with a lot of skin cancers from all of my immunosuppressive therapy and all of the whole body radiation and all the chemotherapy, all the treatments that have saved my life, risked my life in another way. And I struggle with a lot of skin cancers, for one. And I rarely get them on my face, but I'm super superficial and I admit this. And when they're on my face, I'm just not a happy girl. And I had 3 taken off my face, just little biopsies, but I'm super self-conscious about it. We all have these insecurities from things that have been told to us before. And, I have been told that nobody would love me because of my scars back in the day. And, I was always so insecure about my scars. And then there was one day, rewind a few years ago, where I had this huge skin cancer taken off my entire lower lip. And I used to have like the Angelina Jolie lower lip, and then I had this huge skin cancer taken off. And this is when masks were not cool. And I was wearing this mask for a long time. And I just felt so out of place, and then one day I was like, Erica Jane, you're going to put on your big girl pants, and you're just going to go out and you're going to show your scars and you're going to be proud of who you are. And that moment truly changed who I've become along the way. And I am so proud of my scars, even through my insecurities. I'll still feel the insecurities, but I usually shift, and I can shift like I did today, right? Because I'm all about maximizing the gift of today and putting on our big girl pants when needed and really showing up and living our best lives today, because life is so short. And I'm so excited to bring you this show. But first, I wanted to share a little bit of my theme song with you for these moments when I do feel more insecure about these exact scenarios, right? Scars that are really visible on my face, or when I had to wear oxygen, right? And there's no way of wearing oxygen that people can't see that. It's so visible. It's like, I am sick. That was a really hard moment for me. And so, when I have those insecurities, like I did today, I play this song, and perhaps you guys all know it. It's called This Is Me from The Greatest Showman. And here we go. Sing it with me. I'm bruised. I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Here I come. Oh yeah, I'm sure you don't want to hear me sing, but I think we all need our songs to empower us, right? And that we find our strength again. And we have amazing Joanna today. And I cannot wait to introduce her. Give me 1 second. I hope you really enjoyed the show last with Daniel Mattei, who was a fabulous guest talking all about his new book with his dad, Dr. Gabor Mattei, called The Myth of Normal. And you can find my story in that book. It's a huge honor to have been included in that book. Today, we have the amazing Joanna with us, Joanna Vikara from Vaasa, Finland. I pronounced it correctly, I hope. And yes. I want to read to you. Welcome, Joanna, first of all. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh gosh, I've been looking forward to this show forever. You are just such an inspiration. And I want to read to my viewers and to my audience a little bit about your bio, just little bits here and there that I was so inspired by. And Joanna sent me this a few months ago. We've been waiting to do this show for quite a while. So I got sick with ankylosing spondylitis, reactive arthritis, and fibromyalgia 14 years ago, although being chronically ill since I was 3. I coped with pushing myself over boundaries and ignoring the fact that I was sick, living like I was still healthy. And this was the most harmful coping mechanism, which among other things led me to complete burnout in 2018 to 2020. This redirected my focus to turn inwards, to lean into myself, to get to know myself, and to notice my mental health issues like anxiety and depression. Accepting being chronically ill was huge. I did cognitive psychotherapy over 3 years. She struggles with functional bowel syndrome or bowel problems like IBS, which arose in 2017. And now she's taking this active role, eating gluten-free, milk-free, no red meat. and on all these dietary restrictions. She's taken her power back. She's also a fitness athlete competing in international fitness competitions. And she's just had her first competition just recently that she's going to tell us all about. She's truly incredible, and her message is so powerful, right? I really want you to all tune into this. We can all do this. I did this myself in the early days of diagnosis. I'm fine, no problem, just a blip on the path. And we push through boundaries, like she said, right? But these are not healthy coping mechanisms. And we're going to talk all about this today. Joanna,
Yes.
thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're truly such an incredible force. And we've been in the background of each other's, like we met through social media. And I just think you're just such a powerful force. Let's take it back to, when you were younger. You say you've struggled with illness since you were 3 years old.
Yes.
How did that present at that time?
Yes. So when I was 3 years old, I suffered from chronic headaches. So psychologically, generally between the ages of 2 and 3, that's when you start to formulate your first memories that you can remember when you're an adult. So I have this memory where I'm holding my head and screaming to my mother that, "Mom, rip my head off. It's hurting too much. I want a new head."
Wow.
So eventually, when I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. So that's I kind of have gathered these illnesses through my life. So perhaps that was something like this, because they never find any reason for that. But going to hospitals was pretty normal ever since I was a child. So I didn't really consider it as different. I mean, like, it was so normal to go to hospital or have a surgery. So I had my tonsils out, and then 2 sinus surgeries before I went to school. So before age 8, yes. So going to surgeries and being a 6th child and being poked and prodded, it was kind of normal. And then later on, after getting all of these new diagnoses in my adult life, I learned that as a child, you really don't have any mental tools to grasp at all of these experiences that you have had as a child. So then I had to work through them as an adult. Like, for example, I became eventually a people pleaser because, of course, as a child, everyone was deciding about my life. So the doctors and my parents, I didn't have a say whether blood tests were going to be drawn or there was some kind of surgery or MRI or any other medical test being done to me. So I kind of learned not to have my own will in that sense. So that's something that I did then work my way through later on in psychotherapy, as you mentioned.
Well, that's interesting. Like, can we pause on that for a second? Because that is really interesting, right? Like, I too felt that on my journey in a different way. I felt like I was institutionalized against my will. Right? Like, I felt like I was a prisoner almost. And sometimes I was shackled to my hospital bed. I didn't choose this path.
Yes.
Right? There was no part of me that this was my will. I agree with what you're saying there. It was really hard for me to grasp that and say, like, just that pure acceptance of what you're talking about later in your bio. But, and I want to say this from the point of a child too, because, I've got a child with type 1 diabetes. And when he was first diagnosed, I've always preached to my children, what happens to your body is your choice. Right. And I remember when he was first diagnosed and he was quite sick. And so it was really hard for them to get IVs in, and he had to be poked all the time to check his blood sugar and his fingers and get more labs and yada, yada. It was really intrusive. Gosh, I think he had like 40 pokes in one day, and he was really maxed out by this. And he kept telling me, "Mommy, this isn't my choice. It's not my choice. You told me I get to choose what happens to my body." And it was like he needed me to protect him from it, and I know in my head, I was protecting him by having these tests done, but it's hard, right? Because you feel like this isn't your choice. And that is a huge part of having to accept and all these choices that are made for you. That was a really powerful thing that you said right there.
And when I started to work through this, I learned that there's a term for all of this, and this is something similar to everyone who has had a health crisis, that because it happens to us, we don't choose it. So what happens is a term called learned helplessness.
Yes.
So so eventually you feel like nothing you ever do will change what happens to you, and
Yes.
you become a victim and you give up. And then when I listen to your story also, I find that there are similarities, because then you kind of have to work through that you actually gain the control, that you still have the choice, that you can still try to do something, whatever it is, even if you decide. For example, sometimes people in Instagram, they are saying to me that, you're so privileged when you are in remission and you get to do all these things with your body, that I can't even um, get up most of the times from bed in the morning. And then I said that even then, getting up and taking a couple of steps, that's something that you can
Yes.
decide to do, that today I will
100%.
take two steps and that will be my accomplishment. And
100%.
then and then you get to gain the control over your life, so that things are not just happening to you, but you are actually the bus driver. And then looking through all of it, that okay, this has happened to me, and accepting it wasn't exactly easy at all, because the difference in autoimmune diseases, like ankylosing spondylitis, which I had, is that instead of getting a diagnosis firsthand, it took them 8 years to give me the diagnosis. So not
Let's talk about
knowing.
that in a second. Let's talk
Yes.
about that in a second. But you covered a lot of stuff right there that I want to really
Yes.
break down for my listeners. Now, let's talk
Yes.
about this idea of learned helplessness, because you're right,
Yes.
right? It wasn't your choice. You felt like that.
Mm,
I just watched this really interesting psychology experiment on learned helplessness. And it
mm,
was this classroom setting where a teacher gave out, a really easy, quote unquote, easy test to half the class. And then half the class got a different test, but they didn't know that at the time, right? And it was
mm,
just like an anagram kind of a thing, like give me another word. And so the class that had the easy test, the side that had the easy test, they had words like tab. And so they could change that to bat,
mm,
right? Or lemon, and that would change to melon, right? And then
mm,
the other class, the other side of the class actually had words, they didn't know this, but they couldn't
mm,
have been made into another word. Okay. So it was so hard. But then the learned helplessness came in because she said right away, the teacher said, put your hand up as soon as you're done. Right.
mm,
And without knowing it, all the students had these two different tests. And so the half the class that had the easy test, right, with bat and lemon, they're like, oh, yeah, done within seconds. Right. And the other group is like, what? Like, how are they done? And then they're feeling less confident. They're feeling weak. They're feeling not as smart. Right.
mm,
Because the other class, and they're like, how did they do that? How can I not get this? Am I
yeah.
this? Am I lacking the ability to do this? You just doubt yourself through this idea of learned helplessness.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, in this experiment, the third word was the same. Both sides of the class had the same word. And she said again, put up your hand as soon as you're done. Well, the side that had the first two easy words, they put up their hand again within seconds.
Mm,
And even though they had the same word for that third word, nobody put up their hands because of that very concept of learned helplessness. It's
mm,
really interesting, right?
yes.
When you feel weak, when you feel so reliant on everyone else. And I always say that the doctors are part of our journey. Like, I'm a huge advocate of medical health and
Yes.
everything that brings to us, right? I'm a huge advocate of this, and I wouldn't be alive without it. But at the end of the day, our doctors are educators and they facilitate the
Yes.
path, but we have to become the hero, right? In our own story.
Yes.
And I couldn't
Yes.
change that I had cancer, just like you couldn't change that you had this autoimmune process going on, right? But you
Mm,
can change the circumstances of your own environment, and you
mm,
can take
yes.
control of that. And for me, I understand what you're saying by when you're reaching out to those people on Instagram saying, get up and take a few steps. Because for me, there were days that taking a shower, just a shower, was like the
Mm,
feats, for a day. And I would be like, oh, well done, Erica Jane, but you compare that to my normal life, and,
yes.
and wow, that would have been a very unproductive day, of course. But you
Yes.
can't do that You have to
Yes.
take today for what it is. And if those
Yes.
couple steps are what you can do today, then you have to celebrate that success, because tomorrow it might be 3 more steps than you did. And then the next day
Yes.
you might be entering a fitness competition like the amazing Joanna did. Right? But you have to take control of the circumstances that you can take control of. I think this is powerful. We have a comment
Yes.
that came in.
I said
Oh, I see, I see,
about,
I see.
yeah.
Okay, got it. Anyhow, I think that's really, really powerful. Now, I missed to say in the beginning too, Joanna obviously is from Finland, and I have very strong Finnish roots from my grandma who just recently passed away. And this idea of sisu, this
Mm,
concept in Finland, sisu, of being, inner strength, and this powerful force within us that we can all bring out. I think this inner strength is a really powerful force on our journey. And Joanna's talking about how to really bring out that inner strength, that beast within us when we need to bring it out, right? And if it is
yes.
just taking those 3 steps per day, that's bringing out your inner sisu, right?
Mm,
In
yes.
the face of all these circumstances that you're facing on that day, right? And this
Mm,
is the mountain that you climbed for that day. And be
yes.
proud, because there are days if all we do today is hold on, then that is a feat. I've been there too, right? I think
Yes.
that's all really powerful. Now, can you talk about when you were first diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis? And so for our viewers that don't know what that is, that's an autoimmune disease that causes a fusion of the joints, right? And extra bone growth,
Yes.
and it causes everything to fuse,
Mm,
um, particularly in the spine.
yes.
Let's talk more about this.
Okay, so one doctor told me that I was a textbook case, how
Mm,
it evolved. So I have underlying gene mutation, positive gene called HLA-B 27.
27, yeah.
And then I got Campylobacteria from a broad trip in 2008, which then manifested as a knee inflammation called
Mhm.
reactive arthritis, and which then developed into a pain condition called fibromyalgia, and then eventually developed into ankylosing spondylitis. And all of these are kind of, let's say, 5% of each chance or something similar in order to develop. But like I said, so once you get one, you tend to have multiple. I once saw an Instagram post where people were commenting in the comments like, how many do you have? Like 5, 6, I have 7. And we were a little bit laughing about it, because once your health goes, it starts to unravel. But yeah, so I eventually got the ankylosing spondylitis diagnosis 8 years after I got the stomach bacteria and the knee inflammation. And I got it when I couldn't bend over the sink to wash my face because my back was hurting so badly.
So take it back
I
for 1 sec. How old were you when you had the stomach bacteria, the Campylobacter?
I was 20.
20.
So
Okay.
yeah, so I was 28 when I got it, and I'm now 34. Next year I'll be 35.
And can I ask what stresses were happening in your life in this time?
Um, eh, at the 20, I was just finishing a year off between high school and probably university. Um, I hadn't decided yet. So that was what was going on at that time. So I was supposed to decide what to do with my life. And then I was housebound for a year and a half with the knee inflammation,
Right.
and walking on crutches and waiting for a knee surgery to figure out if there was actually something physical broken in the knee or something like that. So 1.5 years I was housebound waiting on what to do with my life, and I was actually by the Finnish healthcare system uh, suggested an early retirement at the age of 20.
Gosh.
So, so
At the
basically, from
time you're supposed
society,
to be
yes,
climbing the ladder of life,
yes,
right? Out
yes,
socializing, out learning everything you can possibly learn.
yes.
And you're
So
stuck
even the
home down with
society gave
people.
up on me at that point.
Yes. And how
So
did you feel about that?
I felt horrible, and then
Yes.
then afterwards. my parents put me to night school to university so that I would have some kind of resemblance of normalcy or normal life. So what I would hang on to dear life by doing anything, something. And since, like you mentioned, the Finnish sisu, so I went on course after course after course. Eventually, I have credits enough to go to the university, and mm, yeah. So that was the stress at the time. And
Absolutely.
later on, when the inflammation began at my neck and back, which led to the final diagnosis, it was after graduation. So I had graduated from university, and again, I was in a point of life where I was supposed to figure out what I was supposed to do. And that was, I graduated from University of Vaasa in 2014 with a major in international business, master's degree. So that was the time when there was a recession. So I couldn't hold down a permanent job like in the previous years people could have. So I then had 7 years almost back to back temporary jobs
What did
until I,
this feel like though in your
yeah.
spine and in your neck? What did the ankylosing spondylitis feel like? How did that diagnosis come about?
The diagnosis came about when I couldn't turn my head more than 20 degrees. And
Wow.
every step that I took when I was walking, it hurt in my neck. And at the time I was dating, and I didn't tell him at all what was going on. And eventually, because I was scared, like you said, of um, being judged
Yeah.
for it, and then we of course come to the other points we were discussing earlier. But it felt like it was so painful. Like in the morning when you wake up, you're in pain. When you try to do anything, wash your face, vacuum cleaning was horrible, really horrible experience with the um, back pain. And then I had a job where I was both in the office and at the warehouse. And in the warehouse, when I was carrying even 2 kilograms of packets or something, I felt pain in my back. So I was horrified, literally,
Mhm.
about
Scary.
again. Yes,
Yes.
I was horrified for my future, that how can I support myself for the next 30 to 40 years, God willing, if I live that long, if I can't work and it's my first job after graduation. So
Yes.
how is that going to come about? So 1 year after that, eventually I got a really good rheumatologist here in the local uh, public hospital, and he diagnosed me with ankylosing spondylitis.
Can I
And
ask one
after,
question? Can I ask one question?
yes, yes,
Did you talk to anybody about the fear you were feeling?
no,
No,
that came later.
because you felt some
Yes,
shame for that fear? Or how
yes,
come?
yes,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
yes. I
Mm-hmm.
was I was ashamed for like 10 years straight. And I still fear it a little bit, to be judged for it, and especially from people who cannot comprehend. If you haven't had any kind of uh, health crisis ever, you really can't empathize
Yeah, no, I
or,
get that. Like,
or understand. Yes.
yeah,
So
I've been really excited for this show because I think you and I share a lot of similarities. But um, I was a poster child for health and wellness. I had served
yes,
as a thriving sports chiropractor, right? I preached the message and I practiced what I preached by every measure to live this life of health and wellness. And I inspired my community to live its peak health, right? To reach
yes,
its peak health. And my tagline was reach your peak in health and sport, at work and at play. Right. And
yes,
so when I was knocked down at 35 with cancer, I was like, my gosh, what did I do so wrong? You
yes,
know, how I was dumbfounded. I had always taken such pride in my ability to be quote unquote strong physically,
yes,
right?
yes,
And I really had to reshift the way I saw myself and the way I
yes,
valued myself, right?
yes,
Because that vanished like that. Just
yeah,
like it would in older age, right? We're not always going to have that I call it the cute little Lululemon bum. Here in Vancouver, we do a lot of yoga and everyone has the cute little Lululemon bum.
Yes.
I was in that group and, and then after getting sick, it just all hangs, in a different way. And I was like, my whole physical body, was completely different from
Yes.
what it was. I used to hike up every mountain,
Yeah.
and soar down them all. And I still ski, but I don't hike those mountains anymore in the same way. And
Yeah.
that was really, really plummeting when we're
Yeah.
holding on to that past life,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And we really need to go through our own journey of what you're talking about, acceptance. And we're going to get into that in a second, right? But
Yes.
that's a powerful force that until we do that, we really struggle
Yeah.
mentally
Yes. Yes.
coping. Yeah.
So a year after I got the diagnosis, I was working in a different city. I found a group of young women that I used to hang out with, and then I told one of them that I had ankylosing spondylitis, and I used to always vet very carefully, like if the person can be trusted with my huge shame. So then we were there in one night having drinks, and then she outed me, and she was like, does anybody here care if Johanna has ankylosing spondylitis? And I felt so terrified, like 5 women knew all at once about my super secret. And then eventually in therapy, etc., learning about acceptance, and now preaching it online with my face about everything. But really, I felt so judged for it. And even if I would go on dates or meet someone new, I would take my medications in secret so that no one would know about this
And
flaw that
you
I
feel
have.
weak. You feel
Yes.
weak. And
Yes.
you feel like you get a lot of pity, and
Yes.
that's the last thing that's going to help us is that pity,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
And the thing is that actually we are the most incredibly strong people ever. And this is due to the fact that what we have gone through, so that we are actually much stronger than your average kind of person who hasn't necessarily had these health crises. So instead of looking it like a terrible flaw or something to be ashamed of, which I really hope that I could tell my 20-year-old self, that first you can get through this, and then this will make you stronger and better for it, and you will find amazing, incredible people that are like you. So you will not
Yes.
be alone on this. So these would be the 3 things that I would want to tell my 20-year-old self,
Yes.
which is the
I love
reason
that.
why I'm doing my social media at the moment.
I love that. And you're doing such a great job with it. And I think it's important to highlight on this very note, right? We don't
Mm,
just magically get over all these insecurities. We're still
no.
human. We still
Yes.
feel these insecurities, just like I did this morning, thinking, oh my gosh, I might just cancel this show, right? And reschedule this.
Yeah.
So this is healed, because I'm so mortified right now. But it's not letting fear hold us back. It's not that we don't
Mm,
feel the fear. It's not
yes.
that we don't have these insecurities, but it's moving through it to still live
Yes.
our best life. And
Yes.
that's how we go through that phase of acceptance, right? It's just
Yes.
like somebody who feels social anxiety, and then they're standing
Mm,
outside a grocery store, let's say, and they get all overwhelmed saying they don't want to go into the grocery store to see people, but it's
mm,
still taking that step to go through that grocery store, right? We all feel the fear. We
yes.
do. We just adopt healthier coping mechanisms to
Yes.
move through that fear. Just like
Yes.
today, and I'm going to share a story about Joanna today because, leading up to the show, even Joanna had insecurities about sharing her last name with us
Yes.
today, right? And this is a really big point because, again, she didn't want to come across as being weak or feeling any inferiority in her professional development career
Yes.
choices, right?
Yes.
And so she was thinking that potential employers might look downly upon her for the struggles that she has faced on her
Mm,
path. And over
mm.
time, since we've been talking, and it was totally her choice to share her last name today, but over time, she's developed this amazing attitude. What did you say today coming on the show?
Yes, so I said to myself that, and it told you that if any employer in the future would think that my strength having overcome all of this is a flaw, that is an employer I don't want to work for.
Amen.
Yes.
right? And that is such a powerful force that you have come to this point of acceptance. And I
Yes.
just want to celebrate you for that, because that must feel really good. That must feel like you are standing on top of your mountain, right?
Yes.
Living with these secrets, living in this idea of shame. That secrecy creates the shame for us.
Yes.
But as soon as we use our strong voice and start telling our story openly, look, I've been knocked down. I've been knocked down again and again and again. And this
Mm,
is what I've learned. And this is what's helped me stand up tall,
mm.
right? Because you are standing so tall right now.
Thank you so much.
Yes. I mean, look at the post I did about about you coming on the show today, speaking of standing tall and beautiful and strong. Gosh, the path that you've taken. So tell me about that, right? You're facing all this chronic pain. You're facing all these diagnoses, and you're in pain, constant pain. What
Mm,
was the magic bullet? Where did the click in your mind say, shoot, my coping mechanisms are not healthy for this right now. I really need to turn inwards. I really need to do the work and look at my mental health that's come into with this, because mental health does play hand in
mm.
hand with
Yes.
autoimmune disease, right?
Mm.
And cancer and
Yes.
everything else. Everything
Yes.
is all
Yes.
impacted. And
Yeah.
so tell me, where was that magic switch?
Uh,
Where did you start to take back that power? And how did that happen?
I had to go to total bottom
Mhm.
before I actually was able to see that I have to change in my ways. And regards to like chronic illness, and I saw a post once like, um, if your doctor doesn't refer you to a psychotherapist or a psychologist with your diagnosis, seek a different doctor. And I completely agree. And
Yeah.
that is something that I once discussed with a rheumatoid nurse. She said that they simply don't have resources for to guide
Yeah.
people regarding mental health issues, or how our diagnosis and chronic illness affects our mental health. So what happened to me was that I was then early in my career trying desperately land a permanent job, and eventually, being who I am, kind of a perfectionist, overachiever, I started to burn out, and I've also sourced it to this time of year. So now it's in Finland very dark. The sunset is at 4 p.m. So when you go to work, it's dark. When you get off of work, it's dark. You never see the sun unless
Yeah.
you go out during the day, work day. And even then, it's kind of rare. So every November for 2017, 18, and 19, I would burn out. And 19 was the worst because in our um, company at the time, people for various reasons at the same time decided to leave. So I was eventually doing um, single-handedly 5 people's job, including my supervisor. And then I
Wow.
burnt out, and then I
What did
went
that
to
feel like?
psychotherapy.
What did that burnout feel like?
I I was I didn't realize what was happening to me until I was crying at the office, went to the doctor, and had high blood pressure at the age of tender age 32.
Wow.
So I had 149 over 99 was my blood
Wow.
pressure at the time, and they put me on sick leave immediately. And after 2.5 months, since they couldn't have hired bureaucratically 5 people at once, so I had to save myself and I changed positions. But that is unfortunately the working life that we are facing today. And with regards to what you said about divorce, like people with health crises are more likely to get divorced. The same goes for chronic illness in general, or health crisis in general. We are more likely to burn out unless we consider our boundaries and our capacity in general. So since I was disregarding completely that I even have any health conditions that are taking my energy, or spoons as we refer it. So in the beginning of the day, let's say you have 10 spoons and you use one for breakfast, you use two for shower, one for going to work, and then the rest are done and then what you're supposed to do, because everything takes out our energy more when we already have things going on in our body. So
you talked about divorce and health issues, and you've watched my
yeah.
TED Talk. Thank you for that.
Yes.
And yes, in that TED Talk, Own Every Second, I did talk about this, right?
Yes.
That they don't tell you this at your diagnosis. They don't tell you this. I was sitting there holding my husband's hand in hand. They didn't tell me that a cancer diagnosis leads to divorce 50% of the time,
Mm,
right? There aren't the supports in place to help young
mm,
families or those relationships through
mm,
that. And
mm,
we all can develop unhealthy coping mechanisms, right? But those
mm,
young families, and we all deserve those supports when we're facing such trauma,
mm,
right? And
mm,
they just are not in place. And in fact, women, when you were talking about the shame and feeling weak
mm,
with a health diagnosis, women in particular are more at
mm.
risk of divorce and relationships collapsing,
Yes.
6 times higher for
Yes.
cancer. I don't know for general health conditions, but women are
Mm,
6 times higher, um,
mm,
have a higher chance of divorce with a cancer diagnosis than a married man who faces a
mm,
similar diagnosis,
mm.
right?
Yes.
We really need to discuss these channels of mental health and get more support happening for
Yes.
both the patient, right? The caregiver,
Yes.
spouse, the children, everybody involved in that immediate
Mm,
circle, because this
mm.
diagnosis doesn't just happen to the immediate patient,
No.
right? And it really needs this bigger circle of
Mm.
support
Yes.
that isn't there. And
Yes.
that's exactly why these social media groups are really powerful, right? Because again, in being the hero in our own story, we can't rely on just the medical doctors to supply this for us, right? We
No.
really have to advocate for ourselves. We really have to look out for those channels that can help
Mm.
support our own best mental health.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was in a privileged position that my parents have been supporting me throughout the years, and also with the good job, so I was able to go through the private healthcare system to psychotherapy. But in the public healthcare system, even in Finland, if you are referred to psychotherapy, the waiting line is 6 months. So if you have an immediate mental health
Yeah.
crisis or deep depression or anything, you wait for 6 months to get help. Like, what is that?
Yeah, and that's
It,
exactly why I do what I do on social media. I too
yes,
felt so alone on my journey. Even though I was
yes,
enveloped with forces of love from all corners of this world, I still felt
yes,
so alone. And so this powerful force that's evolved over the last few years on social media, it's right there, it's tangible. You can connect with
yes,
anyone going through similar circumstances, and that's just what you need to do to get up, to take those steps, even if you can only take 3 steps in that day, right? And to
yes,
be empowered by those people who have walked the walk and who have talked the talk. And so,
yes.
how did you start getting into these fitness competitions? And how did you develop this amazingly strong body, despite all the fact that's going on inside your body? I always say, I'm a preacher, that you don't have to look um, in person like what's on paper medically,
Mm,
right? I
mm,
always walk in, if I meet new doctors, they're like looking through all these hundreds of thousands of papers, right? And then I walk in and they're like, you don't look anything like what's in here. And
yes,
it's like, that's right. We don't have to, So
yes,
how do you now not look like what's in all of your medical records and what's going on inside your body? Tell me.
yes. So before having the diagnosis and the correct medication that put me on remission in 2016, I went to the gym uh, when I was scared at the warehouse that I can't hold 2 kilos in my hands. So that's why I went to the gym in the first place, so that I could actually get up early in the bed from my bed and not have such pain. But of course it didn't work like that. But I was able to move better, but I was still in some serious pain. So even when I started without the ankylosing spondylitis medication, after a gym workout, I would stretch for 2 hours just so that I could be mobile again. But I still always went back because I had a firm belief that the good muscles will help me with my bad joints and spine. And that is something that I still preach today. So then after that, I guess the hunger grew. And when I got my diagnosis, the same year was the first time I went to see a fitness competition. And at first, like my friend said to me yesterday, who doesn't uh, who is not into fitness, she said that, I'm sorry, Johanna, but those people, they look so super lean and quite ugly, in my opinion, on stage. And I was like, yeah, I understand your point of view, because that is exactly how I saw them the first time. But then I started to go to the gym because I wanted to save my whatever health I had left, and how I could support myself in the future. And then the muscle gains, that's not very easy. So the
No.
next time I went to see a competition, I didn't see skinny, ugly people on stage. I saw thousands of hours of hard work, and it really intrigued me. I was like, I want to do that someday. And then
Love
I could,
that.
yeah. So
And it's all
so
about surrounding yourself, right? With those
yes,
inspirational role models
yes,
that aspire you to be your best self. As surrounding yourself only with those people, right? That
yes.
aspire you to grow and to be better. Yes.
Yes, and I know one man from the UK who is competing in fitness and bodybuilding, and then I know two women in Finland who have MS and are competing in bodybuilding.
Love that.
One, yes, and one who has a tumor condition. So, like, there are tough people out there, but I wouldn't know any of them if it wasn't for social media. So, we are all on the same boat, trying to um, preach that you can take or have this kind of extreme hobby or become an athlete, even if you have a health condition. And of course, what was difficult for me this first competition season that I just finished was to then deal with the fact that I'm most likely 100% competing against the healthy, but that is not considered on stage. They are only considering your external physique. They don't see your struggles, what you did to go get there. They only compare you to the person next to you. So to give myself kind of compassionate, um, positive self-caring voice
Yes.
after that,
Yes.
that was very difficult.
Yes. But you did what you did, right? Like you showed up,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
showed up. And
Yeah.
that's where you need to celebrate. And you did the
Yes.
work and you got there. You're on stage. Like that's
Yes.
incredible. Right?
Yes.
It's just like when we take it back to that person who's in bed looking out to you saying, "Oh my gosh, you're so quote unquote lucky you get to do all these things," right?
Yes.
I don't think luck has anything to do with it,
No.
um but it's starting off by taking those 3 steps, right? And now you're on
Yes.
stage and yes, competing against people that are quote unquote healthy and haven't gone through the struggles you've been through, but it's not a
Mm,
competition with them. This
no.
is this is you're better than the person you were yesterday. You have a
Yes.
stronger body, right?
Yes.
Despite all that you're going through, it's a competition with yourself. And you
Yes.
challenged yourself to show up.
Yes.
And that's where you need to celebrate that amazing success. That's
Thank you.
incredible. Yeah, you're look at her shine, risers and thrivers. Look at her shine. She still has all these processes going on in her body, right? But look at her shine. We can't focus on what we can't control. If she just
No.
focused on the ankylosing spondylosis, she'd probably be back in her place, and avoiding the
Yes.
whole world. So she took her eye off that and focused on overall health and wellness, right?
Yes.
And strive to be stronger and better in the ways that she felt passionate about.
Yeah.
And that's what we all need to do. I want to talk really quickly about this idea again of self-worth and shame and feeling
Yes.
weak that we can all feel in the face of these health diagnoses. And I've been there myself. Like when I was waiting for my new lungs after having terminal cancer, I could barely walk across my own kitchen without feeling like I was going to lose capacity of all bodily function. I don't know
Mm,
if I just didn't have enough oxygen, or if perhaps I was having some mental health issues go hand in hand with all that I had been facing, which would have been
mm,
completely predictable, right? And expected. But I
mm,
couldn't remember the slightest thing. I couldn't even remember how to cook. Like I love to host for like tons of people, and I couldn't remember how to make a simple meal for my
mm,
family. I would go to the grocery store and I'd almost be lost, on the days that I could actually get out and buy a couple groceries, right? And I
mm,
would just be lost. And I felt plummeted. I used to be this girl who, like, you know, this
Yes.
thriving businesswoman, this thriving sports chiropractor, you know, this kinesiologist, like respected, highly respected in the medical community. And now I
Yeah.
can barely make a dinner for my family. Like, I felt so plummeted. I used to
Mm.
connect with my kids through sports in the backyard, through going for hikes, and I couldn't do any of that, right? I would draw, like, I'd be like, let's draw some more. And I'd draw like a stick sunshine. Like, I don't know, I don't draw, you know, I'd draw stick people and I'd feel plummeted again because that's all I could think of to draw.
Mm.
I couldn't even think of conversation to talk about. Again, whether I lacked oxygen or whether I just was having some depression go hand in hand. I don't know.
Mm.
You know, there were
Mm.
so many things going on. I even felt if they fixed my lungs, you know, if I had these new lungs, would I ever come back to myself? You know, I
Mm.
felt like I felt like I was such a burden to my family, you know, and we can often forget, you know, our own self-worth. It doesn't matter
Yes.
what we're contributing to the world at that time. And it was one of my, I call him my chief, you know, he's my head bone marrow transplant physician. He was my leukemia doctor. And he said, Erica, your family doesn't need you to do anything for you.
Mm.
You know, they just need your presence.
Yes.
And that was a really hard one for me to grasp, but I'm even holding a mug that was given to me by my youngest. It says,
Yes.
you are my favorite person, you know, and
Oh.
he didn't need me to be cooking meals then. He didn't need me to be doing that, but both my kids, they just needed me to be present, if that makes sense. And if you
Yes.
take the example of an infant, right? An infant, what's the infant's worth? Immeasurable, right? Like
Mm.
priceless. Yes. But that infant certainly, you know, doesn't contribute much in terms of like making food. And in fact, they create a lot of work for us, right? We're changing diapers constantly. We're up all night, right? But that infant's worth is still immeasurable. But
Mm.
somewhere along our way, somewhere along the path, we're told that our self-worth is dependent on all these other factors. And
Contribution to society. Mm.
100%. And I think it's when we go through these crazy health cycles or crisis in general, right?
Mm.
That we realize I was on the wrong target with how I
Yeah.
valued my own self-worth. And it's this
Yes.
beautiful process. It's like I describe it like, you know, when I was sick, I was transforming like a cocoon, like a butterfly would in a
Mm.
cocoon, you know, and then or a caterpillar would in that cocoon. And then I've evolved with all this information, all these awakenings as this butterfly, you know,
Mm.
through that path of realizing that my eye was on the wrong target before. And
Yes.
I just feel from all the awakenings that I've had, I just feel like the luckiest girl in the world to have gone through all that
Yes.
I've gone through. Because could I imagine have living that life? I now live a million more lives each and every day because of the lessons that I've experienced. And I think you have too, right?
Yes.
I live a richer life. I live a deeper life
Mm.
because it caused me to go through this process of awakening, as I call it.
Mm.
But if we don't, I'm not saying these crises come to us for a reason, but we can all make a reason out of it,
Yes.
right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyhow, this has been a powerful show. You and I can talk forever. We like to keep
Yes.
this show at about 35 minutes. We are way overboard. But Joanna, you and I can have many more conversations.
Yes, definitely.
Can you leave my audience with some last minute notes of inspiration? If they're struggling with a health condition today, how can you inspire them? Or any crisis, frankly.
Wow, that's a big question. If you feel alone, then reach out. We are there.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
you won't be alone when you're going through this. And remember also in social media, for example, looking through my page, this was not always me. It was a journey. It began from somewhere. So every day, just take a step towards your own well-being because we only live once.
Yes. Powerful. Rise today, my friends. Whatever your fears, whatever your insecurities, push through those. Work through your fears and acceptance and work through it all. Take the time for personal growth, for personal development. Learn the meaning
Mm,
of what comes to find you. All the best, my
yes.
friends. Rise today. See you all next time.